Hello and welcome to Spectrum News at 2. I am Beat O'Brien coming to you live from the beautiful hills of Ibiakuruan. Let's take a look at the headlines. Presidency vows to end terrorism in Nigeria. Vice President Osibanjo hopeful Nigeria will be peaceful again. China reports 3 dead in latest COVID outbreak. Details of these stories and more in a moment. We'll begin the news on our bulletin this afternoon with a report that the presidency has vowed to end terrorism and banditry in the Northwest. The presidency said there was an ongoing re-equipment and reorganization of the security and intelligence forces. Recall that the North has been under serious terrorism and bandit attacks, which have taken a turn for the worse in recent times. Away from that, Vice President Yemi Osibanjo has said Nigeria would be peaceful again. Osibanjo stated this in a chat with newsmen shortly after the Easter Sunday service at the State House Chapel, Aso Villa, Abuja. He noted that the resurrection of Jesus Christ is a defining moment for Christians, adding that the most important thing to bear in mind in this resuscitation of hope. He therefore advised Nigerians to be courageous and hopeful, stressing that peace will be restored in the country. Meanwhile, Speaker of the House of Representatives Femi Gbajabiamila has congratulated Christians, calling for unity and peace among Nigerians. He made the call in a statement by his media aide Lanre Lasisi, where Gbajabiamila noted that the Easter period calls for sober reflection and dedication to the nationhood. He urged Christians to be their brother's keepers at all times. The speaker, who asked all citizens to support the government in its efforts to tackle insecurity in the country, called for concerted efforts to contain insecurity across the country, stressing that Nigerians should continue to live peacefully with one another irrespective of any perceived differences. To politics now, where there are strong indications that the People's Democratic Party (PDP) has settled for indirect primaries to pick its 2023 presidential candidate on May 29. Sources in the party who spoke on anonymity said the ongoing consensus talks among some aspirants is not aimed at representing a single aspirant at the presidential primary of the party. Reports say the party has no plan to impose a candidate on its members, but is encouraging talks amongst intending presidential candidates to aid voluntary step down to reduce post-primary crisis. Away from that, a Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project SERAP has called on President Muhammadu Buhari to withdraw the pardon granted to former governors of Plateau State Joshua Chibidarie and Taraba State Jolly Nyame. In a statement issued by its Deputy Director Kolewole Oluwadare, SERAP asked Buhari to use his good office to urgently review and withdraw the pardon granted to former political leaders. The group asked Buhari to propose constitutional amendments to the National Assembly to reform the provisions on the exercise of the prerogative of mercy to make the provision more transparent and consistent. Meanwhile, National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons (NATIP) says it has rescued 65 victims of alleged human trafficking in Niger Republic. NATIP's zonal commander in charge of Kano, Abdullahi Babala, made this known in an interview with newsmen in Kano. He said victims were apprehended by the operatives of the Nigerian Immigration Service and the Nigerian Police Force at the Kongolam entry post in Katsina State on the Nigeria-Niger border. Reports say the victims are Nigerian citizens comprising 17 males and 48 females aged between 15 and 42. Elsewhere, the National Log Draw Enforcement Agency (NDLEA) has intercepted large consignments of cocaine at 3 major international airports in Port Harcourt, Abuja, and Lagos. Having arrested 7 traffickers, NDLE spokesman Femi Babafemi in a statement explained that the drugs were being smuggled by Brazil-based drug cartels before the attempt was foiled by the operatives. Reports say 5 suspects were arrested at the Port Harcourt International Airport, while 3 were arrested during the inward screening of passengers on board Qatar Airline flight QR 1433 from Doha to Port Harcourt. And back here on news on the home scene, where the Akwa Ibom State Governor Udomi Manuel has advised politicians seeking elective positions in the 2023 general elections to shun hatred and violence, stressing that no political office should compel them to shed blood of the citizens. Emmanuel, who is also one of the presidential aspirants, gave the advice in his Easter broadcast in Uyo. The governor reiterated the need for people to remove hatred, ethnicity, anger, and all forms of divisive tendencies from the state's body politically, as they reflect on the unflinching love for mankind represented by the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Still in Akwa Ibom, health workers at the primary health care in Ibom in local government area have appealed to the state government to rehabilitate the only facility in the area and construct an accessible road to the center. According to one of the workers who spoke with Spectrum Television correspondent, the health center needed urgent attention due to the health demand of the host community and neighboring villages. Our correspondent completes the report.
For the people of Ibom and neighboring villages in Patani local government area of Akwa Ibom State, access to good healthcare facility is far from reach. Speaking with our correspondent, 1 out of the 3 workers at the center, Mrs. Stella Essien, laments lack of drugs, poor condition of the center, and bad roads as setbacks.
If young kid, it make up for register, I mean, yeah, messing up to 200 and something. I'm going to go into it. Then when you aged people, I don't want any who came in. In the year, indeed, I can't call it rap. It is a big boy, one minute. People know that from 60, 70 years old people, they used to come. But because of my new came in, say, boy, and I get it, they come and manage.
Mrs. Essien said that thieves constantly robbed the center of useful facilities. The people, however, called on the state government to rehabilitate the center and construct the road in the area.
Doctor and all the and I know staff again out there, and I was so me because who saw me a free way and wait to make us all the new doctor. If it up in trouble, I said, my mother. I say, what more to happy at our machine happy yet. But what one time, pay government who won't boom book, yammo. A carry team way behind it. A carry team going by a minute, as is the last STVNg. I'm in having the moment. They're going to weigh me.
Hansen Uko, Spectrum Television News.
Thanks, Hansen Oko. Now to Africa, where South African authorities have found 6 more bodies amid the ongoing rescue operations following devastating flooding in the country's east coast. KwaZulu-Natal Premier assured South African search missions were back in full swing despite being impacted by extensive damage to the province. Reports say 63 persons are still missing or unaccounted for, with the death toll now standing at 443. Meanwhile, South Africa's Executive Council has approved the provincial policy on government support funeral assistance to people who passed away as a result of the flood disasters.
KwaZulu-Natal received 38 call-outs, and on the scenes that were attended, 6 bodies were recovered. We stand at approximately 63 persons missing or unaccounted for. The death toll now stands at 443. This morning, the Executive Council approved the provincial policy on government support funeral assistance to people who passed away as a result of flood disasters.
On the foreign scene, Catholic Pontiff Pope Francis has called for world peace as Christians celebrate the 2022 Easter period, describing this year's celebration as Easter of War. Pope Francis, who called for peace in Ukraine, tasked world leaders to embrace dialogue and peaceful coexistence. Still on the foreign scene, Ukrainian Prime Minister Dmytro Kuleba says defenders of the besieged city of Mariupol would fight to the end against Russian forces. Despite an ultimatum from Moscow asking fighters to give up, local officials in Ukraine said Russian forces have announced they would stop anyone from entering or leaving the city. Although capturing the whole of the city is seen as a major strategic prize for Russia, Kuleba added that the port city has not fallen and Ukraine forces are determined to hold the port.
No, city still is not fallen. There is still our military forces, our soldiers, so they will fight till the end. And as for now, they still are in Mariupol.
Away from that to China now, where reports coming in has it that 3 people have died from COVID-19 in Shanghai for the first time since the financial hub entered lockdown in late March. A release from the city's health commission said the victims were aged between 89 and 91 and were all unvaccinated. Shanghai officials added that only 38% of residents over 60 are fully vaccinated. Reports say the deaths are the first COVID-linked fatalities to be officially acknowledged by authorities in the entire country since March 2020. The city is now due to enter another round of mass testing, which means a strict lockdown will continue into the 4th week for most residents. Still to come on the news this afternoon. CAF to include banned Kenyan, Zimbabwe in 2023 AFCON draws. Do stay with us. Well, thanks for staying with us on our news bulletin at this hour. And now to news from the business scene, where the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Tinipere Silva, has said that the federal government is due to complete the multi-billion-dollar brass liquefaction natural gas project that had been abandoned over 17 years ago. Silva, who stated that the government was looking for investors to revive the stalled gas project, spoke during an inspection of the project site in Tuan Brass Bios Estate. The minister, who inspected the Brass LNG site with the management of Greenville LNG and interested investor in the Brass project, said the federal government desires to complete the project because of the manifold economic benefits it will bring to the nation. Still in business, Director General of the Standard Organization of Nigeria, Farouk Salim, has said that no one is tracking importers of substandard goods in Nigeria. Salim said this in Lagos during a stakeholders sensitization forum, adding that the essence of sensitization with stakeholders was to communicate and share views on how to make businesses more efficient. He, however, attributed the high rate of insecurity in the country to the importation of substandard goods. In health, the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, said the country recorded a continuous downward trend in the spread of COVID-19 infections and a decrease in the number of samples tested across the country in the past week. This was contained in the latest COVID-19 situation report, adding that as of April 14 and 15, only 2 cases of the virus were recorded in the country. In the situation report, the agency also stated that the number of samples tested decreased to 68,911 from 83,642 reported in week 13. And to sports now, where Nigeria's under-17 girls maintained a good position for the final round of the African Qualification Series for this year's FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup. After a convincing 4-0 victory over Egypt at the MKO Abiola National Stadium, Abuja, defender Tuminamu Adesina flashed a shot into the side netting in the 13th minute and another shot above the target in the 20th minute. This was then followed by Ajakia, who scored her 4th goal for the qualifiers with an angled shot that beat goalkeeper Habiba El-Tar fair and square in the 28th minute. Both teams clash again in Cairo on April 30th. The winner would most likely play Ethiopia in the final round of the series for tickets to the FIFA World Cup in India. Still in sports, Kenya and Zimbabwe will be included in the 2023 African Cup of Nations qualifying draw on Tuesday in Johannesburg, despite being banned by FIFA over government's interference. Confederation of African Football CAF spokesman told sources that the 2 countries will be included in the hope that the bans will be lifted not later than 2 weeks before the first match in June. Should Kenya or Zimbabwe fail to have their suspensions lifted, the groups they are placed in will shrink from 4 nations to 3, with the top 2 finishers still qualifying for the finals. On our entertainment news this afternoon, Nigerian singer Divine Ikubor, better known as Rema, has decried the lingering strike by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU. The 21-year-old star, who pleaded with ASU to call off the strike via his Twitter handle, noted that he was yet to start school since getting admission because of the strike. Recall that ASU embarked on a 1-month warning strike on February 14th and extended it by another 2 months over the alleged failure of the federal government to fulfill its agreements. Meanwhile, Minister of Labour and Employment Chris Ngige has advised ASU to return to the classrooms while looking for a better way to pressurize the federal government to give in to their demands. And that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, SpectrumTv.ng. You have been watching Spectrum News at 2. I am Beto O'Brien, thanking you for watching.